Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reish.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, a show about living your very best life. And that's what we try to do every week, is talk about topics that can help you in your life. My name is Sandra Reish. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I run an anxiety and depression clinic. And I love talking about ways that, in particular, couples get into trouble and relationships get into trouble. And today we have a topic that I really think is a very, very important one. So first of all, let me just invite people, even though I always do this and it very rarely happens, but if you want to call into the show, 1-866-472-5792. If you prefer to text, 1-514-796-4357. Email works too, info@helpforanxietydepression.com. It is my pleasure today to introduce my guest, and for the first time, because she's been here many, many times as a clinical counselor, but she, congratulations, is now officially a licensed psychotherapist. Welcome back, Melissa Hindley.
That feels so
How's
good.
it feel
to be so good when
you are a licensed psychotherapist?
Yeah.
So people listening are like understanding what's the difference and what happened and what's going on. You were a clinical counselor 2 weeks ago. Now you're a licensed psychotherapist. What does this mean for people listening? Why is this a big deal? Who cares?
Yeah, it's a big deal because Quebec really tries hard to protect the title of psychotherapist so that no one on the streets or anyone can call themselves this or say that they can practice therapy. So it's really to protect you as the public.
Which is an important point.
Yeah. Because I went to school outside of Quebec, it's a long story, but because short version, because I did my master's outside of Quebec, to get back into Quebec, you need to have the equivalency. So without equivalency, they just required me to take a couple more classes. And once I finished that, then they recognized me and registered me as a licensed psychotherapist.
And you've been wanting this for a long time. And so it just gives you, the formality and the official status. And we've always loved your knowledge, but now more people can have access to you.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
I'm very happy and proud of you, as I told you earlier.
Yeah.
I wanted you to come on today's show. I think it's a very important show. It's about a topic that really, for me personally, was a real game changer. And so people listening are like, just say the topic, all right? Okay. So the word itself is not going to mean much for most people. So the word is enmeshment. So let me start with this story. I grew up with parents who were, from my vantage point, were madly in love. And they did every single thing together. There's nowhere you'd ever see one without the other. There's no way. So I thought, and many of our love songs and movies show us that is what romantic love looks like. And I thought, how fabulous is that? And to my utter shock and dismay, as an adult, I find out that this is actually very unhealthy. Not to say that my parents weren't in love and not to say that there weren't good parts of it, but enmeshment is a word that we use where a relationship becomes fused, where instead of there being a you, me, and an us, which is what we need in a relationship, in any relationship, even mine and yours, okay, there needs to be a you, a me, and an us. There becomes only an us. And instead of being two people 100%, we have two sort of, this concept 50-50. It's a weird concept because we need to show up as 100%, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But basically, the message is that fusion of any kind is very dangerous. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It was a real shocker for me because romantic love in the movies often shows things like, you complete me, I can't live if living is without you. It sounds like that's what love is supposed to be, but I see you nodding. It's a problem. You have strong feelings on this. I can tell by the way you're responding. Take it away, Melissa.
But I love how enthusiastic you get talking about this.
It helped me a lot to find out that this is not good.
Yeah, and hearing you talk and help your couples through this, I think it's amazing because, when we're understanding enmeshment, I find sometimes it's really difficult to explain because sometimes like in our family and family dynamics, sometimes it's like really, really subtle behaviors that sometimes we see as caring or we see as healthy, but it's really hard sometimes to find the line between, these really, really subtle behaviors. Is it something that's helping us, or it might be something that's harming us?
Right. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah. So, and I loved how you said there's like a you and a me and an us.
It's very important for couples to understand. Maybe we should just pause on that, because I think that, I do these retreats for couples, and I really have to start with that psychoeducation concept. Is so if you're listening right now and you're in a relationship, the first question you want to ask yourself is there a you? Is there a me, and is there an us, and are they separate? Why is that so important in your view, Melissa? And I'll be happy to add in my opinions.
So usually in relationships, a lot of times, if we're depending on somebody to fill our self-esteem, to fill our self-worth, then the problem with that is that we can attach our self-worth and self-esteem to external things or a person. But the problem is that when they're not there, or when these external things are not there, then we end up losing our sense of self. And this is what happens a lot in relationships, is that we lose our sense of individuality. And we might have weak boundaries, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later on.
And you see, you're excited about the topic too. It's a really big topic. This is one of those stuff. Sometimes we do a topic and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I have much more to say. This is one where we could do 3 shows on it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So losing your individuality, let's stop right there. Like that is really a problem. And I have to say that shows up a lot, in particular for women. A lot. It's a big problem because we fall in love and we think that it's kind of a romantic concept that there is no me without you.
There's no me. And so I see this in a lot of my clients, but they'll start to stop doing things that they enjoy, or everything becomes about the relationship. And so friends start to get put to the side. Family members start to get put to the side. So a lot of it starts to get concentrated on the relationship, which feels like it's great. But the problem is that it's really, really important. And why else is it important to have your own individuality? And then, like you said, show up as 100%.
Okay. Great question. Thank you for asking it. Because, for love to thrive, the 100% is I need to bring some stuff that's mine to the table, okay? And the thing is that if everything is in my relationship, what happens if the relationship, we have a fight or things are not going well, or, something happens, then I could possibly, and that's where the love songs come, I can't live if living is without you. I cease to exist. Now, that is not love. That is closer to obsession. And again, this word enmeshment. So I need to have a fully integrated part of myself. I need to have me. And then I can bring to you my love and come back also to me. So it's a bit strange, but it's going to sound very unromantic. But it comes down to I love you, but I need to love me more, which is not the romantic love songs. I did not know this. I thought it was supposed to be I love me okay, but I really love you, right? How many of us grew up feeling that way?
A lot of ways, right? And especially if we had, that's my question. I think we can address it after the break. Yeah. But how do we end up getting into these romantic fantasies, and how do we end up with these ideas that, my needs are, it's okay if I don't meet my needs, but I'm going to meet your needs, and I'm going to do everything I can for you, the other person.
Goodness gracious. It's such a good question.
So how do we get in this position?
Well, we're going to take a break, but if you are in a romantic relationship, or you'd like to be in a romantic relationship, or even in your friendships, because friends can be a match too, can't they? Yeah. Yeah. So even in your friendships, don't go far. This is the show for you, because I promise you, if you understand the dangers of enmeshment, your entire life will change. So stay tuned. I can't speak. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Exactly where you're... Sorry, we're like chatting so much. I'm on the air and I'm chatting with Melissa because I love chatting with her. Why do I love chatting with her? I didn't really give her a proper introduction. She is a licensed psychotherapist. She is really outstanding at what she does. She's a specialist in anxiety, depression, emotions, relationships, and much, much more. And we're very lucky she works at the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression, which is our clinic here in Montreal. But if you're not in Montreal, you can also reach out to us. You can call us at 514-777-4530. And there's lots of ways of staying in touch, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. So I'm going to start this segment, Melissa, we were talking about, I want you to talk about some of the signs of enmeshment. But before that, I'm going to talk about sort of a metaphor that famous psychologists came up with to know if you're in an enmeshed relationship and what healthy relationships look like. And I want you to picture this, you and everyone listening. So I want you to picture trees, okay? Now picture one strong oak tree and another tree attached to that oak tree. So what happens at that point is that the strong oak tree is actually the small tree that's being attached to it is sucking vitamins from the strong oak tree. And that is our metaphor for enmeshment, because when we don't have two whole trees or two whole human beings, there is something going on where there's a transfer of energy. And that eventually with two trees, when we see two trees attached like that, one tree is going to die. So this is not a joke. So we don't want that. And then in relationships, as you know, we often see couples where there's two solid trees and the top of the trees where the leaves are, they never touch. They're just, this is our parallel couple. They're living together. You know who you are. You're listening right now. You're living together. You're not really having any connection, not much intimacy. And you're kind of like, really, this is marriage? Not good either. So what does healthy relationship look like? And non-enmeshed is two solid oak trees, the leaves on top, the wind comes by, the leaves touch, and the leaves separate. They touch and they separate. Does that make sense? Isn't that a great metaphor? That's Young who came up with that.
Yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
I love that metaphor. And as you're saying that, it reminds me of because I use this metaphor too with redwood trees. I think that's what they're called. But those big sequoia trees, and you can see that they're very strong and built like two big trunks of the tree, but underneath it, their roots are intertwined, like so it's like having that solid foundation, but then being separate, independent individual people, but then, like you said, come together come together and separate together. So okay, so
people fall into enmeshed relationships where they don't come together and separate. They're just constantly together. How would people listening know that they've fallen into enmeshment? I know you have some signs.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
So there's some signs that this can start, because as we were talking as a teaser before the break, that this really develops in our childhood. So there's some signs in our childhood, but then there's signs as an adult to see if you're enmeshed. But I'll talk about more about the as an adult for a second. But as I was saying, is when our self-esteem feels dependent on the relationship.
Right. If the relationship's going well, I'm good. And if it's not, I'm a disaster.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. We can also be when you feel like conflict is unbearable.
Oh, yeah.
This is another big sign, is that it creates a whole bunch of anxiety.
It was for me. I mean, I was that person, no doubt about it, because why is conflict unbearable?
Well, it means like a potential abandonment. Right. And we don't want to feel that way, so we attach ourselves really closely to our relationship, and any type of conflict creates a lot of anxiety.
Really good point.
Another one is like sometimes the person might feel as if there's no privacy. So it sometimes it's like, well, it's not to say that not to share everything, like not to have any secrets. I don't agree with secrecy, because that's another part of enmeshment, is when there's secrecy, and especially in the family. But sometimes you are entitled to a little bit of privacy, and and it's just a really tricky, healthy balance. But it's when we feel as if we have zero privacy. So I see couples go through each other's phones or emails or things like that can create a lot of boundary issues.
Yeah.
And
we have to be careful with that. I just want to put a caveat in that, because you shouldn't be doing that, right? Your couple requires privacy. But different show, different topic. If you're in a relationship and your partner would say, absolutely, you can never look at my phone, that also is a problem.
Well, that's a red flag.
Yep, that's a problem.
Yeah, because then there
should be sort of a sense that you could look at my phone anytime, but therefore you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, good point, Melissa. Keep going. You're awesome.
Another one where, again, it goes back to the conflict, but we might not have emotions of our own. So if our partner or a person that we're in a mesh relationship with, if they're upset, it's like, of course, when you're in a relationship, like, sometimes your mood might a little bit affect mine, but it's when I'm feeling exactly your emotion.
This is one that I think people really struggle with, including me. I know for myself, it's less about catching someone's upset. I know when I'm joyful, and I'm with someone, if they're not able to experience the joy, it's difficult for me to hold it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a mixture of enmeshment and caretaking, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you're only I had to learn that what's happening there is I'm only entitled to my emotion if you feel it too, which isn't really a great message.
No.
So part of what we have to talk about is how to get out of this.
Yes, definitely how to get out of these roles, because you can see how it can rob away a lot of positive experiences.
Absolutely. And give the other person incredible power, which could be very exploitive, even in the kindest of partners, I must say.
Yes. Yeah. Again, the feel the need to rescue. You talked about a little bit about the caretaking, so feel the need to rescue, or when we experience like a strong sense of shame. This is more sometimes with family members, like when in enmeshed families, it's like, and especially I want to talk about too, like with the holidays coming up.
It's a perfect time to be talking about this.
Yeah. And with the holidays coming up, this is where we experience a strong sense of shame, is when our family members might make us feel guilty for, for example, not coming for a dinner or not phoning as often, and it's okay for the family member to express their feelings, but it's when the guilt trip gets placed on you, and then you experience a lot of guilt as if I have to go. And I hear this a lot in my family too, because now we're getting older, and my cousins and nieces are having kids, and so it's hard to separate with the holidays, like which family, you have to separate between your family and your spouse's family.
That's it.
And so sometimes we do have to say no, or to alternate. I know a lot of families start to alternate years.
Right, that's a good strategy.
But when there's an enmeshed family, it's when this guilt trip, I know my best friend's going through this too sometimes, there's a little bit of the guilt that she feels of alternating families.
Yes, and I again, my family of origin and many people listening had this idea that you couldn't get together with a parent as adults without the other sibling being there. Like we have to all be together all the time. Yeah. And when I did finally learn it, I remember saying to my dad, let's get together. And he'd say, well, we have to call your sister. And I'd go, well, no, you can get together with her on your own, and I'd like some time just with you. And this was very novel for my family. And that's a little bit what I want to talk about is how do you get out of this? Is that first, and this is why we're doing the show, is first you have to assess that this is not healthy. So let's just make sure it's very clear. I talked about the trees, how it's sucking nutrients. It's a parasitical relationship. What is your opinion why enmeshment is so unhealthy? I just want to hear your words on that.
Yeah, well, definitely, as we talked about how we end up losing our sense of self, but then we end up, and I can relate to myself, there was a time where it developed very, very weak boundaries. Right? Because I felt like
there can't be any boundaries.
There's no boundaries, right? Because
it's where do you end and where do I begin type of thing, right?
Yeah. So because, like you said, the family is always together and we always have to do things together, that sometimes, no wasn't necessarily an answer in our family. So now that, and I felt guilty when I had to say no. So that's one of my biggest consequences of this was having very weak boundaries.
So I think you're saying, and I think you're right, that the part of the antidote to this problem is to develop boundaries. Yep. If you grew up in an enmeshed family, there were no boundaries. I like to say that I grew up with the message that love is love, love, love. Love is everything. Yeah. And not that much about respect. And now, as you know, I talk a lot about in our book, we wrote about this, that love without respect dies. So you need boundaries in a relationship to have a healthy relationship. So it's not always love, love, love. It has to be sometimes, like you said, saying no or saying I can't do that. And that means that there's going to be separation between you and me. We're not going to become one.
Yeah, because when I'm saying yes to somebody else, like my partner, when I really want to say no, or a family member, that's always the first sign is if physiologically you get that, like that irky feeling that you really want to say no, but you end up saying yes, well, then that's usually a first sign. But when you're saying yes to someone else, you're saying no to you. So instead
say that again. I've heard you say that before. That's such a good line, and I know your clients love that line. So say it nice and loud for everybody.
So when you say yes to somebody else, you're saying no to yourself.
Oh, that's a good Melissa-ism.
Yeah. So when you say love, 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 I'm going to send love and give love and all the messages that we received as growing up, we're giving that, but we're not giving that to ourselves. And so sometimes you're just like reframing it. Instead of love, love, love towards the other person, we want to love, but then just maybe even more give that to ourselves.
Right.
So it's love, 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 but in our direction.
Right.
And sometimes that means saying no. Like sometimes that means saying, that I can't come to the Christmas dinner, but why don't we do brunch instead? Finding an alternative, because you can rush yourself and try to pack in. I know there's a lot of get-togethers and a lot of things during the holidays, and sometimes it's about not putting so much pressure, and that's okay, but finding some sort of solution alternative so the other person, it can be a win-win, as you call it.
Yeah. So that what I would suggest then to piggyback on what you're saying is that to do Melissa's strategy, to find out, you have to take a moment and ask yourself what you feel when somebody says something to you. So it took me years to learn this, but I offer it to my clients is that when someone's asking you to do something, to maybe say, I need a few minutes to think about that. Let me get back to you. So that you can check in, is this something I want to do? Sometimes it takes me a really long time to figure out what I want to do because I did grow up in a enmeshed family. So I'm really good at reading what other people want. I'm not always that good at knowing what I want. So I need to take my time and figure it out. Because sometimes saying yes to someone is not saying no to you. But if you're not considering yourself, then yes, it is.
Yeah, I love that. And that will help your self-esteem, because once you're giving yourself more love and saying no to things, sometimes we might feel a little bit bad, but then once we see that our stress is reduced and we gave ourselves that self-love, it ends up feeling really good, really powerful.
We got to take a break, but why, before we take the break, just a question,
Yes.
Why do you think that we glorify enmeshment? Because we do. We talked about romantic relationships. You completely,
Yes.
I can't live if living is without you. We glorify it there. And Christmas, you're bringing up Christmas, the Christmas commercials and the Facebook phenomena is we're going to be together. We're going to be like roasting chestnuts. It's going to be just magical family time, and we're all going to be together all the time. And why do we do that? Why are we glorifying this in your view?
It's like, again, the romantic fantasies.
Romantic fantasy.
It's the fantasy of what we like our life to be like. But the problem is that in reality, it's not like that the other days of the year.
And it's not even that fun to be with people. As Shakespeare said, familiarity breeds contempt.
Mm-hmm.
Very brilliant man. Familiarity breeds contempt. Spend a lot of time with someone you love and you'll start to get annoyed with them.
Yeah.
It's actually true. So it's funny, we're sending the message, and if you do it, you'll probably get irritated,
We will. But also marketing, they get us on this.
They really do. They really do. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Your life, your health, your network. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
We are back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, and during the break, Melissa and I were just chatting about this topic, so I wanted to finish off where we were, but I want to move on to parenting and families, because enmeshed families, again, have devastating consequences on kids. And again, Melissa so aptly mentioned the romantic fantasy of the commercials and a family that's together all the time. How beautiful is that? And again, that doesn't actually bring out the best in people. So we're not in any way suggesting that you don't spend time together. We're saying, and this is a good pre-holiday show, you want to spend time together. You want to also have some time apart. Yes. This is true in your romantic relationships as well. To segue into parenting, Melissa brought this up. I thought, I'm going to let her talk about it, but I'm just going to put my bit out there, how seriously dangerous it is. There are many, many parents. We treat many parents and many kids at the clinic who unconsciously or consciously foster dependence in their kids, meaning we have to always be together. The message is you can't do this without me. And I have to make a very strong statement on this, and because it's actually true, is that is not good parenting. Your children are on loan to you, and it's not that good news for me. I have young kids who are slowly but surely growing up. They're not that young anymore. And so believe me, this is not good news for me. I'm only human too. Of course, the idea of them flying the coop and doing their whole thing is very scary for me, a very scary concept. But good parenting is teaching your children always to move towards independence. And that's really hard on the parent. And I get why parents don't do it. However, it's devastating to not do that for your kids. Why do you think it's so devastating?
Well, again, we want to encourage the children to have their own sense of individuality. And
why?
Well, because as we talked about, like in terms of this is probably generational, like enmeshed families, it goes from generation to generation. So the thing is that one of the signs, for example, is when the parents share all the emotions with their children.
Oh, yeah. Right? We see that a lot in the clinic.
Yeah. So it's hard. And sometimes...
So let me play the role of that parent. What's wrong with that? We're an honest, open family, and we share our emotions. Where's the problem, Melissa Henley?
Yeah. So if I see that, if I was a child and I saw that you're upset, as children, we take things very personally. So one, I might think that it has subconsciously something to do with me.
Okay, so I'll tell you it's not about you.
Okay. And two is that I'm going to learn how I don't like to see you upset. And so I'm going to learn how to help or fix your feelings. Right. So there's a couple of things. So one, I might learn how to fix or help your feelings. So now I'm starting a caretaking because I don't like to see mommy or daddy depressed or anxious or angry. So I'm going to start to caretake. But then also it kind of shows that a lot of things that you share might not be appropriate for the age of the child, right? This is when we start to...
Yeah, that's what I was going to add in that point, that, our brains are not formed till we're 25. And so when this concept of I'm just going to share my emotions with my kid, it's fine. We're just an open, honest family is honestly a bit of a ridiculous concept because your children they're not ready to hear that. And plus, often those emotions are about your husband or your wife, which puts your kids in what's called a double bind. Because even if you're divorced, that kid, it's still their other parents, and they should never be in that situation. And like Melissa said, if they see your emotions getting upset, what are they to do? It's just too much for their brains to take in.
And they'll start to actually associate the parents' feelings with their feelings. So if I see that, and that's why we see sometimes a lot of anxiety and depression in young kids because they're associating or if the kid's feeling really guilty, well, then I'll work with the parent to say like, well, do you feel some guilt? Could they be picking up on some guilt that maybe you're sharing? And so, children often associate with their feelings. Another sign that could be dangerous is when I think I brought this up with the couples, but it's like we're not allowed to disagree. Right.
Okay.
That it becomes enmeshed when it feels like there's no conflict or that we're not allowed to have our own feelings. And that's part of the individuality and that's the you, me, us. It's like you have your feelings. I'm allowed to have my feelings about it. And then how do we communicate that so that we end up with like a solution? That's
tough for parents, though. What if their kids have an opinion that's very contrary to their value system? This is a very important point.
Very important.
So what is the parent to do?
Well, the thing is, it's hard, but to try and recognize, try to listen first because we don't want to, make judgments, or it's sometimes really hard, but, to reflect on what the child is saying. And then, and to see how are you interpreting it? Are you sending, let's say, what would be a good example
Well, let's say the child says, I don't believe in God.
Yeah.
And the family is very into religion.
Yes. Yeah. That would be really upsetting.
Yes.
That would be hard. Right. But to try and encourage, that's the hard part, but is to try and encourage, you don't have to agree with it, but to try and encourage at least their expression of a feeling.
Right.
Right. And what you can do with that after is a separate step, but at least feel like the child has a space to say and the safety of saying this, because the problem is if the child doesn't feel safe to say this, then it might come out in anxiety, or they might not feel like they can tell anyone.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is exactly right, but the parent has to have quite good emotional intelligence because they have to put their stuff aside. And tell me more about why you don't believe in God in a religious family is quite something to say. Yeah. But yes, I think you're right. You have to hear your child's opinions, and there has to be room for your kids to disagree with you. But then what, Melissa? Then what? Do you try to sway them to your way of thinking? What do you do?
Well, what I see, unfortunately, is that when we try to sway, maybe there's some sort of compromise you can come up with. But if there's a swaying, then unfortunately, you might push the child away more.
Further away. That's an important point. Good.
Another one we talked about is when the parents, I see this a lot, when the parents get overly involved in the child's life. And what's the problem with this? Why is this such a downside?
Well, I think what you're starting to go towards is the concept that your children need to develop skills such as resiliency. And so if I'm overly involved in their life, I'm probably going to protect them from any difficult situation. And instead of them learning how to cope, they're going to learn to rely on me. Now, my payoff is I become very important. That's fostering dependency again. However, that's not in the child's interest at all. What do you think?
Very important. And I love how that's a point that we talked about in the break, is that it does create this sense of dependency, and it secretly feels good.
Yeah, it does.
Right? It does. But you're right, is that we're not building the best skills for our children to
Right. So it's not always what feels good, it's what is good.
What is the best for them. So definitely trying to not get overly involved with your child. You want to be there and supportive and listen, but not to caretake or fix or to be overly involved. And that you can try and encourage your child to brainstorm ideas of how do they want to solve this problem.
Yeah, that's a great strategy.
You can guide them, but not to do it for them.
So asking them to brainstorm a strategy is really a great idea. You're still involved, but you're letting them get to the solution, because the opposite problem of enmeshment would be like completely detached parents where they're not involved at all, which is not at all what we're advocating here, just to be very clear. No. We don't like extremes of any kind. Enmeshment's at one end, severely detached is at another end. So I love your strategy of, Johnny or Mary or whatever your child's name is, that sounds like a rough problem. Let's brainstorm some solutions. And you kind of let the child come up with stuff. So you're still supporting, but you're letting them figure it out.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I think that's all I have for the signs. Why is it also that I wrote a point about secrets in families? Why is this together with enmeshment? Because I remember you and I had this conversation about secrets in families. I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember, but secrets in family are always linked with shame. And I think you said shame was a sign of enmeshment. Yes. So that's probably the answer, because if the family secret has to be kept, there's shame attached to secrets. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's a big one. And also when there's strong sense of enmeshment, there could be, we play like different roles. Like when we see families enmeshed, it's like every child or every family member will play a different role in the family. So we have one member of the family might be the scapegoat. And what's the scapegoat?
That's the person who gets picked on.
Yeah, the person that the family blames the problems on this person.
Right.
They become, and the real issues of what's going on aren't
dealt with. Right.
Yeah.
And in psychology, we often call that child the identified child. And they'll unconsciously happily take on the role to keep the family together.
Yes, that's a very big point. Then we have the hero. So what's the hero in this family?
It's usually the caretaker. The hero is like, I'll make it all better. I'll make the family seem really normal, and okay, I'll pick up on cues. And these people really often grow up in caretaking jobs: nurses, teachers, psychotherapists. Yeah,
and the hero is like, it's like as if they have the whole family, like as if the whole world is on their shoulders,
which leads to a lot of anxiety later in life. Yeah,
and this is where we'll see, like you said, caretaking in relationships that we talked about early in the segment, and in jobs. And then we have sometimes family members can take the role of the joker or the clown. And why would this?
I don't know. I know that sometimes the joker or the clown, again, is an anxiety response to diffuse what's going on. Yes. But I'm curious what your research has led you to on this.
Yeah, it's really a defense mechanism. So when there's conflict and when families become enmeshed, sometimes it's like those, in TV shows, what do they call those, that the humor when there's like a serious moment?
I don't know. Is there a term for that?
Yeah, there's a term for that.
In TV shows when there's a humorous moment?
Like a comic relief.
Comic relief, yeah.
So the joker of the family plays this comic relief. It's like all the tension that, even though the family on the surface seems very close and perfect and nice, but the family members could be picking up on this tension. And so the joker will give like that comic relief of that tension.
Okay. So they may or may not even want that role. They just
they just take it. But a lot of jokers, I find, they actually sometimes end up taking the role because they get a lot of positive feedback from being funny.
Yeah, of course.
They get liked. But then when it comes time to emotionally connecting, that's not helpful.
Right.
And then the last one, a sign that there might be enmeshment in the family, is the lost child. So this is the child that will retreat, withdraw, escape into their room, focus on TV, video games. It's like really as if the child's like removing themselves and focusing. It's like as if they're the lost child. So these 4 roles, they're signs that there could be an enmeshment that's going on in the family. And all these roles has their own sense of shame. So it's really important to try and identify which role that you might be taking in this family and how is that role replaying in your romantic relationships.
And it will. So these are really great ways to look at if these things are happening in your family, maybe there is some enmeshment. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Your life, your health, your network. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Okay, well, as I thought, this would be a big topic. No doubt about that. Enmeshment. Again, sort of what we see in the movies, sailing into the sunset, every moment together. You never see them clipping their toenails. You never see them shaving their armpits. Real life looks a little different than that. We need time together as in a couple. We need time apart, the trees together and separate. In families, time together, time apart. This is health. This is what healthy relationships look like. So what are some tips for people to work on this issue of enmeshment if it's something they fall into?
Yeah, so we already talked about, just a recap for those of you who are tuning in. But
You're so good with the radio. Look at you.
Getting more experience. But to really set small boundaries. So, you know, sometimes it feels like I hear clients say, but I can't set boundaries, I can't say no, it feels impossible, they'll be mad at me, or they'll make me feel bad. And so just try with really smaller things at first to gain experience, to gain more self-esteem around setting really small boundaries. So that's what we talked about. If it's for the holidays, like learning to say no, but maybe coming up with a compromise. Instead, you know, I can't come for dinner, but maybe can we do a coffee, or can I come over in the morning?
What about, like, I have a lot of clients where, you know, the women start to develop a little bit of, you know, a friendship maybe outside of the relationship, and like a woman to a woman, and they say to their husband, I'm going to go out with my girlfriend tonight, and the husband would guilt the partner, or vice versa. Women certainly do it to men too, which is a sign of this problem, right? So what should I've met many people who tell me about this. They want to go out, they want to hang out, but they feel like they're going to pay for it, basically. Yeah. So what do you say to clients like that?
That would be really important then to put a boundary.
So what's the boundary?
Well, the boundary is because, again, if you, that's a great example. I love it. But if you cancel your plans and stay at home with your partner, whoever it might be, then what message are you sending to yourself and to your partner?
Well, the story you would tell yourself is, I'm saying my partner's important and I don't want to hurt his feelings, and he's very sad, and look how much he loves me. He doesn't want me to go out. So what's the problem?
And what message would you be sending to you?
So that I'm not allowed to have other relationships.
Yeah.
And other connections.
Right. And
that's an important point, because in abusive relationships, by the way, the first sign of abuse is somebody telling you not to have other relationships.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Very good point. But I would try to see, because it's so hard to do, because that would trigger me, right? I'd be like, what do you mean I can't go out, right? Like that would really trigger me. But is to try and look, I always try to do this. It's so hard, takes a lot of emotional intelligence, but to try and not react right away, but try to see, what is this person feeling? Okay, because maybe this is their
scared.
Yeah,
they're scared. Then maybe you're not going to be into them anymore. Maybe you're going to go on and have such a good time that you'll be like, man, this relationship's not that exciting. Yeah, that's the fear, right?
That's the fear, right? So if I can address that instead of getting angry and saying, well,
so how would you address that?
Well, to validate, be like, look, I know you might be scared, or I know, you're feeling alone tonight. So I'm going to go. It's important to me. I made these plans. I made this commitment to myself and to my friend, and so I'm going to make these plans. Can we do something when I get home, or can we do something tomorrow? But coming up with a compromise, so that they're not feeling abandoned and alone.
Well, I think that's an amazing strategy, and I think that people need to apply it. I do know of a case where somebody tried that strategy, and the partner is then so bitter that they're like, it's kind of like, no, not interested. Yeah. What's going on there?
Well, it's like, that's where it's the person's falling into, like, it becomes a little bit of a control thing, right? And so they're falling into a little bit of like the victimization and making the other person feel really bad. So definitely, I think a bigger conversation is going to have to be needed after, if that didn't work. But to have other boundaries and consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, so to be able to say to your partner, like,
what would you say?
Well, I think that it would, the sit down that you're talking about would be kind of, and I have a friend who did this. I remember she'd go out and her husband would call that the kids are freaking out. And every time she'd go out, he'd call and say that. Yeah. And the sit down was basically, and she is a therapist, by the way. The sit down is like, when I go out, deal with the kids. I don't want those phone calls. I think that you're unconsciously manipulating me to ruin my evening. And I'm not okay with that. So and then you have to negotiate how many times in your relationship is it okay to go out with the other. We don't have a steadfast answer. So you work that out with your couple.
Great.
But then there's no guilting on the night of.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting, because I started the show by saying I grew up in an enmeshed family. So I'll just say this. I fell in love with a guy who's not enmeshed at all. So when I go out, he'll never say, like, why are you going out, or why are you leaving me? And sometimes for many years, I'd feel bad that he didn't say that. I wanted him to say it, because I would feel like that would be a sign of love. But it's not. And I realize now how incredibly blessed I am that, we have our holiday party coming up. We have things coming up that I am not going to be subject to ever paying for going out. And I've obviously had to learn to offer that same thing to him. That freedom. What the cliche is, if you love something, set it free, come back. If it comes back, it's yours. If it doesn't, it never was. I know it's a cliche, but it's so kind of true, right? True. You can't control love.
No, we can't. And other people. And the only responsible we are for ourselves. We can't get into starting to control how many times they see their friends or not. And if that's something that upsets you, you can communicate it.
And you can negotiate.
Yeah. Very important. But it's important. Those friends times, I can't imagine what it would be like in my life without those moments. So
right. But you'd be okay if your partner said, look, Melissa, you go out too often with your friends. Can we talk about
a compromise?
Or more date nights with me or whatever? That would be fine, right? I think this is a really really important message that you're saying.
And what you're doing is you're getting to, instead of attacking me and saying passive aggressive comments like you're always out with your friends, you're getting to the root and you're finding the solution instead of attacking me.
Well,
right?
You have it right there. And I'll tell you why people don't do that, though, is there's a certain amount of shame. And this is, a whole other show in itself of asserting yourself and owning your truth. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way if it's your truth. But you need to be able to express it, to say, this bothers me. But the reason we don't express it is we feel guilty. We think that, I shouldn't be like this. I shouldn't be bothered that he goes out.
Yeah. And the last tip I have is really, this is something I practice too, is really practicing being alone. I love how you say that. How do you say it when you say alone? When you say you're not alone?
Oh, you're with yourself.
Yes,
I love that. You're with yourself.
Yeah.
You can never be alone when you're with yourself.
Exactly.
Right. So it's developing a great relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Reconnecting.
So you've been practicing that?
Yes. Reconnecting with yourself.
How has that been for you?
It's good. It's hard because a lot of times I don't like to be alone.
Right.
So you'll see I'm often very busy if I'm alone. But it's really important to try, and that's because, again, we're a huge family and we're always having people
together.
Around. So I have to learn how to practice being alone so that I'm okay with myself being alone.
Amazing. Melissa, licensed psychotherapist. Yes. You did it again. That's all the time we have today. I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving these amazing tips on enmeshment. People often reach out and want to find you. How can they find you?
Yes, you can call the center at 514-777-4530.
And you can also find you on the website, I believe, helpforanxietydepression.com. I get lots of people asking to work with you, and you do some phenomenal work. It's amazing. So thank you so much again for joining us today. I want to thank everybody as well for following this show. It means a lot to us, and I want to invite you all to come back next week. If you'd like to ever hear this show or any prior shows, you can listen to it on straighttalksandarish.com, on the podcast app of your iPhone, or on iTunes under Straight Talk with Sandra Riche. You can drop me or Melissa a comment or question anytime at info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Feel free also to check out our Facebook page, Straight Talk Sandra Riche, and you can leave a question. And remember to like us while you're there. My name is Sandra Riche, and I promise I'll help you to learn to live your best life again next Thursday, same time, same channel. In the meanwhile, this is Straight Talk with Sandra Riche. Keep your eyes on the stars.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Riche. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.